Welcome to episode 5 of the OK Let's Teach Math podcast. This is part 2 of our conversation about connecting research and practice and picks up where we were talking about who has the responsibility for making these connections. Please be sure to use the link below to connect us with a teacher you would like for us to highlight. This could be anything from a favorite lesson to a class routine, a way to think about homework, or just about anything else as it relates to the effective learning space that we create for our students. We want to give you the microphone and the opportunity to highlight the great work happening in our math classrooms.
No, I think that's a good point. And I really think when we think about like who's responsible for doing the connecting, I think you're right. I think it has to be both teachers, and I think it has to be researchers who are willing to take a more practitioner lens.
Absolutely.
And like I remember when I was working on my dissertation, my advisor kept telling me, this is too practitioner focused. It needs to be more theoretical because it needs to be more research focused. But for me, the practitioner work is what feels the most important to me anyway. And so that's the work that I want to do. I want to make sure that my work is relevant to teachers. And so I think it's researchers viewing that as quality research and important research. And I also think it's about teachers being willing and doing the work to like go identify research-based best practices that align with their own work.
So you and I both have a very intense interest in this research to practice connection, in helping both researchers and teachers make sense of all of this. What about all the researchers out there that their line of focus, like their line of study, their line of work is something very different, and they are able to be very successful without ever putting their work into a teacher-oriented conversation?
Yep.
Because there's a lot of that work out there, and it's really important, high-quality work that needs to be done. But that means that somebody then needs to take that work and translate it to teacher language and actionable items for teachers. So it comes back to your original question. Who's responsible for that?
Yeah, I think it has to be people like us. I think it has to be the people who feel driven and excited and passionate about connecting research and practice, because forcing someone who's not interested in doing that to do it isn't going to lead us to the best materials, to the best practices. I mean, and you're right. For those of you that don't know, when you get into educational research, you can pick a rabbit hole and zero in on it and spend your whole career
not just can, you're encouraged to do that. Like you're supposed to find the hole in the literature and go dig into that and dive deep and be very, very deep and not wide at all.
Right.
But example, as a teacher, you have to be wide. You can't be deep. You
That's
have to have all of this skill set from all of this huge body of literature.
Yes. And my husband reminds me of this every day when I'm trying to be like, hey, you should try this and this and this. And he's like, hey, listen, it's cool that you get to think about teaching math all day long. I have to think about teaching the other subjects too. And so he's right. He doesn't have time in his day to go spend hours scouring the internet looking for research-based best practices. And so I think it shows like this, hopefully, that do some of the work in connecting research and practice and make it more manageable for teachers to identify research-based best practices.
You know, there's two or three other types of people that exist in education world that we haven't really talked about that I think are also big players in this transition. Mm-hmm. And I guess I don't like the word transition either, is like translating research and practice, but bringing them closer and getting more overlap. But you've got your district coordinators, you have math specialists, and you have consultants. And let me define those just a little bit to kind of clarify before we go off into a conversation about them. But you have your district coordinators that work at the district level and supervise some type of vertical alignment of the math program across the entire district. You have math specialists, and I'm going to call these the people that tend to be in a building that kind of work between that district coordinator and the teacher, and their purpose is to assist teachers and be a resource for them. And then you have consultants that work outside of a school district and charge money or make their living, I guess might be the better way to say it, but they make their living by providing consulting services, and thus can be another way or another avenue for bridging that. So thoughts on those people?
Yeah, I think a lot of those people do that work, and they have some additional training or support to navigate that, right? So, like, let me just talk about math specialists, because I spent a lot of time thinking about elementary math specialists. Also, you might hear them called math coaches.
Right. Yep.
So these are people who typically have a master's degree or a EDS degree, and have the extra training in not only the math content, but also in reading research and understanding research and conducting their own research. And so they know how to identify what are best practices from the literature and think about how to package those for teachers. And they play a crucial role because they get to live both inside and outside of this school context world, right? They're not in a classroom every single day. Like they don't have their own set of students, but they are in the school building. And so if you're a teacher working with them, they know your context, they know your students, they know your administration, your community, and they also live outside of that space, and they can play around in this educational research space and know that literature. And so they can kind of work to do some of that navigating and that heavy lifting to translate what the research is saying into what's best for you in your classroom and kind of do that work for you.
So is it fair to put them on the spot as being the person that's responsible for connecting research and practice?
No. I think we're all responsible at the end of the day, but I think they can act as kind of a mediator in that space.
I like that. I like that as being one of the additional people. What about district coordinators?
I don't know a lot about that role. Do you?
I know some, but I wouldn't say I'm an expert in it by any means. But I kind of view them as more of like they're more of an administrative type role. So when you think about how much some of you guys are going to get mad with what I say about this, and you can totally push back on me because there's definitely a place in the comments for this, because I know some of you guys are going to listen and like kind of push back, and that's totally okay. I feel like district coordinators, they're coordinating, they're not doing. I think they're a facilitator of information. They support the flow of information from research world to, hey, this is a really cool thing I've seen, or this was shared with me. I feel like they have really great conversations at the district level and bring the district vision to the conversation. But I think sometimes when they're having to balance the individual classroom experience with their need to support district initiatives, I think they have to fall on the district initiative type side, whereas a specialist or a coach gets to fall more on the classroom side.
Yep.
So I think they're both in that intermediary space. I just think that their primary service is just slightly different, assuming maybe both of these exist, but they have a slightly different focus. But I mean, they both have a role, obviously, and I think they're definitely facilitators of that information. But the other one I think is interesting is a consultant.
Yes, and I just
I have a lot of hard feelings about consultants.
I'm interested to hear your feelings because when I was in Ohio, I knew a consultant in Ohio, and she is literally one of my favorite people on the whole planet. And she is just a phenomenal math consultant and does amazing work for schools. And she was a researcher. She has her PhD. She spent a lot of time in teacher ed research land, and she does a great job of communicating that research and that work to schools in really practical ways. And so I want
to get connected with this person.
Oh my gosh, she's amazing. 10 out of 10.
Okay, so here's my big. So as I considered kind of a consultant role, and I started looking at consultants around me, kind of two things came up. One, who pays the consultant? Like when I started trying to put a business plan together, like what does it look like to consult in our state that we're in currently? We're in Oklahoma, and education funding is not one of the top priorities of our state. So there's not a whole lot of money flowing around for professional development and consultants and that type of work. And I love Oklahoma and I love my job. And so it just is one of those things that you have to accept when you try to put together a business plan to consult. The other one, I love that you have a great positive experience, and I know there are a lot of them out there, but I also feel like a lot of times consultants can sometimes pigeonhole themselves and create a very narrow view, and they're trying to push a very specific a very specific story or a very specific solution. And sometimes it gets too small and it becomes too disconnected. And then I almost push that it's more like the researcher that's going down this rabbit hole and not broad enough to really match the needs of a larger district or classroom. Yeah. I don't know. I love the idea of consultants, and I've seen a lot of really great ones, but I've also seen a lot where it's like, I don't know. Like, it just is a weird space. But I don't think it can fall on them either.
Again, I think it's everybody's responsibility. And I'm going to keep pushing that. And that's why I think this work that we're doing on the podcast is really important to me, because I think in some ways I see this as me taking responsibility for this connection and trying to bridge this gap between research and practice. But also I think the teachers that come on our show are also doing their part too, right?
Absolutely. Okay, so I want to push in one more space.
Yep.
One more space with this, and it kind of comes up with the consultant. Like, I kind of hinted at it towards the consultant part. What do you think the influence of money is on this connecting research and practice conversation?
Okay, let me just start by saying,
I feel like we could do a whole episode just on that piece.
Yeah, I'm going to try to not get on a soapbox, so I'll do my best. So my thing about money is we live in a capitalist society, and at the end of the day, having money or not having money
makes the world go round.
That's right. The decisions get made based on that. And one thing I don't know how much our listeners know about, but especially in academia, money is the source of research.
Yep.
And your research depends on your ability to get internal and external grant funding. And as I'm sure many people have heard, grant funding at the national level has been in the news a lot lately, with a big reduction to grant funding from the National Science Foundation, from the National Institute of Health, from the Department of Education. And so not to get into all of that, but my point is this: those organizations determine which research projects get funded and don't get funded. And that influences the research that comes out.
And to add into that, it's influencing the research that comes out because it's influencing the research that gets done or gets paid for.
That's right.
Which also impacts the type of professional development and the quantity and quality of the professional development, because you have to report a budget. When you turn in your grants proposal, you turn in a budget. And so you have to choose, how many teachers am I going to reach? How often am I going to reach them? What is that going to look like?
That's right. And of no surprise to anyone, the content of the research goes through cycles based on whatever's the current hot topic in education. Yep. So right now, as you might imagine, AI is the hot button topic. And so a lot of grants proposals that are due right now are around AI. The Department of Education just had a big slew of money come out and is looking for grant proposals that are due, I think they were due 2 weeks ago, that's about AI. And so that is influencing the type of work that gets done. And so my point here is, when we think about, connecting research and practice, it's important to realize that if you're a teacher and you're like, well, no one is researching this thing that's really important to me and that would really help my classroom, sometimes that's because that idea can't get funded. And part of the reason research can't get funded sometimes is because it's not broad enough. It's not generalizable enough, is one of the issues. The other issue is, and I definitely will try to not get on a high horse about this, is we tend to see funding go more towards these
very quantitative,
very quasi-experimental,
a lot of the things
designs.
That way back to what we started at the very beginning, a lot of those like science type, your comparison groups, your total like just hardcore research type things. Like when you think about medical research and what you want to see happen between different things before you decide to take a particular type of medication. Like a lot of people try to apply that to education research as well.
That's right. And the problem is, like I mentioned before, that doesn't always make sense in educational research.
So you're talking about some professional development experiences that are funded by grants.
Yep.
What are some other, what are some other ways that PD experiences get funded? I mean, you have...
Yeah, so funding comes from grants. Like I said, that can come from the national level. It can also come from the state level. When I was in Missouri last year, we got some funding from the state.
And Oklahoma does have some of that. They also put a lot of qualifiers onto what kind of experiences can be provided. I mean, just like your big funding institutions, your big national funding, they're wanting to fund certain things. So the state is also wanting to fund certain things, which to some level is good and is needed, because we don't want to just spend our money on whatever. We want there to be some quality control in that, which that could be a whole nother conversation about quality control.
But yeah, so the state has funding too. And then also districts have funding.
Some districts, some money.
Yes, and
which that pot of money is dried up a lot in the state.
That's right. And I think it's important to realize then too that districts that have more money tend to have more opportunities for professional development, while smaller districts have less money and they have less opportunities. And then you have your private funders, right? So things like the Gates Foundation, Spencer Foundation, these are all large private investors that give money to researchers like me and others to do different research projects.
Yeah, another one to throw out there, since we just went through this as a state, is our textbook adoptions. I feel like with textbook adoption or a lot of your other curricular materials, oftentimes there is professional development associated with that, which I feel like that also has a whole host of implications that come with that as well. But again, that could be a whole episode. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'm wondering...
Ooh, I have another big question before you go on. Is yours related?
No, go ahead.
So thinking about all of those different things, what are some different levers that could be pulled to motivate space for collaboration and motivate a space for this research and practice overlay? I don't like calling it research to practice, because that implies that research comes first.
That's right.
And I don't think that research has to come first. I think it should be like they're totally...
like parallel.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what are some levers that we could pull? Or is that something we need to I guess if we had that, we would have the magic solution.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking about that. I've read so many things this last week that say if someone had the answer to this problem, that would be great.
That is true. I feel like it was in every article I read as we were preparing for this. Basically, this is a big problem that's been known for a long time, and we don't have a magic answer. But and then it would be, but here's what we think, or here's what we know, or here's our thoughts on this so far.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that the book chapter talked about that I think begins to help bridge this, and maybe this is part of the lever, is viewing math education as a profession.
Ooh, say more about that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. So the authors say, we argue that this issue, this theory to practice issue, should be viewed as a critically important aspect of an effort to make mathematics education a profession. And so they talked about how...
something that bothers me. Okay, go ahead, and I'll come back to my statement.
Yeah, so they talked about how we're not currently viewed as a profession. Sometimes we get viewed as a trade, or because there is skills that we need to have, but we're not viewed as a profession in the same way being a doctor is. Not my type of doctor, the medical ones. Right. But a doctor or a lawyer, those are professions. And one of the things I was really reflecting on about that is, okay, let's say we're saying a medical doctor is a profession, which I think everyone would agree with us.
Right, I agree.
When they do medical research and a new finding comes out that we shouldn't be giving this medication, or this thing leads to this other thing, the profession doesn't say, okay, cool, and do nothing with it for 30 years, right?
Very true.
If a new piece of research came out tomorrow that said this medication has this severe adverse side effect, the medical field would not say, let's do some more research on that before we decide to pull that drug. They would say, let's pull that drug, and then let's do some more research to follow up to see to confirm that finding.
Right.
That's not what we have in mathematics education.
Very true.
We have had research coming out since the 80s on what best practices in math instruction looks like. And I can tell you, as someone who has watched hundreds of hours of teacher classroom video, I'm not seeing that type of instruction in teachers' classrooms. I'm seeing the type of instruction that is the same as from the 80s.
Right.
It looks pretty similar. And I'm not saying one way is better or not. What I'm saying is we have decades of research that says this is what's best for students and student learning, but that's not what I'm seeing in schools. It's interesting to think about, we get all this research, but then what comes of the research? It gets stuck in these journal articles.
Yeah, it stuck in a journal article is a good way to put it. I have so many things that I should have been writing notes down because there's so many pushbacks. One was, when was that? Do you know the publication date for what you just cited?
Which one?
The
article or the book chapter?
Yep.
2017.
So we've been talking about math education as a profession since my first year as an undergrad. So I would assume that it was even long before that.
Exactly.
So 25 years ago. That reminds me of the conversation I had with a colleague about it being anywhere from 8 to 17 years for something to make it from research to the classroom. And then she says it's Googleable. Is that it? Is that a verb?
It is now.
But she mentioned, you could find a citation. I went to find citation and there were a ton of them. So I don't have a specific citation for that, but, oh my gosh, so many things to unpack in that, but we won't. I feel like we need a whole other episode for this one. Okay, I lost my train of thought now. So
no, it's okay. But anyway, my point is this: I think when we're thinking about connecting theory and practice, not theory to theory and, I think it starts with a shift in what does it mean to be a teacher, and I think it also is a shift in viewing teachers as professionals who are qualified and do important work and can make informed decisions based on research.
Can society make that transition?
Other societies have, not in the United States.
So I feel like the big idea or a big takeaway from here is connecting research and practice is messy. It's not linear. One doesn't come before the other. It's not really even circular, I don't think. I don't think it's just a circle. I think it's just a lot of stuff and a lot of different ways of doing it, and nobody has a magic answer. Maybe we'll find that magic answer.
Yeah, and one of the articles or the book chapter that I read talked about this idea of there used to be this old, I'm going to say old, I don't know if it was actually that old, but there used to be this show on the radio called Car Talk.
Oh, Car Talk.
Yeah, I didn't experience it.
I loved Car Talk.
But the idea in Car Talk was you had these two men who had graduated from MIT and also had been mechanics for a long time, and people would call in and say, this is the issue with my car. And the two of them would really take time to listen to the caller and understand their problem, and then they would offer some advice. And then people could leave comments, both researchers and practitioners, mechanics and professors, of that was good advice, or maybe you should think about this, or whatever. And the authors of this book chapter that I keep referring to, Silver and Lunsford, they talk about how maybe that is our first step in connecting research and practice, is really taking the time to listen to teachers and understand their experiences, and then do the work to connect that and do some problem solving with them, not for them, with them, that connects to both research and practice.
I love the idea in theory. I'm going to push back on one thing, though, because I feel like I remember this from Car Talk. And again, you guys can comment on this. That I feel like, yes, they did a great job of listening and they troubleshooted the problems and they loved all of the feedback. But I feel like there was also this, they kind of mocked people whenever they would call in with really maybe obvious questions. Like if you have any basic knowledge of anything related to cars, you would be able to answer the question. So I would want to make sure that we're not going into that space.
I'm not trying to do that.
Yeah. Just for those of you guys that know Car Talk, know that would definitely not be that's not an element, but I love Car Talk.
But I think it's just like you were saying.
Saturday mornings on NPR.
So I think it's just like you were saying at the beginning of the episode of, what if we had a teacher come on that was trying to troubleshoot a problem and, we could think with them. And so we really want this to be, while you and I are here and we're going to be talking to the teachers that come on our show, and we're really excited about that, we want the comments to be a space where other teachers can chime in, other researchers can chime in. You know,
we want it to be a conversation.
That's right.
It's definitely not a one side. It's we're bringing different lenses to the conversation, and we want it to be a fun place to share stuff.
That's right. That's right. And so if you're a researcher out there and we, missed a good research connection, maybe it's even your research. Connect it. Put it in the link or in the chat. And if you're a teacher out there and maybe you did something similar or you had a similar experience, put that in the comments too, because we really want this to be a space where both researchers and practitioners can come together and think about the ideas.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you for spending time with us today. We would love for you to be a part of our conversation. Please leave thoughts, comments, additional insights, etc. in the comment section below. Also, remember to use the link in the description to suggest a teacher that is doing something awesome in their classroom so that we can highlight that thing and share with others. See you in February. It is finally time to get some teachers on here.